On a cold day in January 1991, a young Lithuanian woman quickly gathered her things and left her home, not knowing what would happen by the end of the day. Many outcomes were possible, but none of them were certain. But if history was any guide, neither her brother, or her father would be coming home. The question is, why did she go? It had been less than 2 years since 2 million people had joined hands on August 23, 1989, forming the longest human chain in history, stretching 430 miles across Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. This event became known as the Baltic Way, and it would signal to the world that the Baltic states were determined to be free. The protest marked the 50th anniversary of the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, in which countries in Eastern Europe had been divided up between the Soviets and Nazi Germany. But almost 45 years after Soviet occupation and annexation, things were changing. Protests were taking place all over Eastern Europe as citizens challenged Soviet domination of their countries. And it seemed to work. There was no Soviet crackdown, no tanks or troops carrying off political prisoners en masse. Less than 3 months later, the Berlin Wall fell. People flooded over the border, greeting loved ones and friends they hadn't seen for years, and it all seemed impossible. How could an empire that spanned 2 continents with satellite states across the globe crumble without any of the bloodshed and devastation so many expected? And all of these thoughts had to be running through Nomeda's mind as she rushed with her brother Dairus to join their father, who was now in the midst of defending his country from the largest military in the world. Because on January 11th, 1991, Soviet forces renewed their military operations against Lithuania. But it was the actions of January 13th, 2 days later, that would lead to hundreds of civilian casualties as Nomeda and her brother joined their father, Vytautas, who along with hundreds of Lithuanian patriots were defending the press house with nothing but resolve and an absolute unwillingness to accept Soviet rule. By the end of the day, tens of thousands of Lithuanians had flooded the streets of Vilnius and surrounding areas, establishing barricades to fight with whatever they could, determined that Lithuania's future would be decided by the people of Lithuania, not the Politburo. Their response was so overwhelming that Soviet forces were forced to withdraw, and the USSR State Council recognized the independence of Lithuania on September 6, 1991. The actions of January 13th helped begin a chain of declarations of independence from occupied nations in Eastern Europe. In Lithuania, January 13th would become known as the Day of the Defenders of Freedom, with Nomeda, her brother Dairus, and their father Vytautas, along with tens of thousands of others taking their proper place in the history of a proud, independent, and free Lithuania. So why do we share this story? In part, it's because it was shared with us by Nomeda's son, Jurgis, who in visiting the United States wanted to share the gratitude he has felt for all those who have fought to uphold freedom and to honor his family, who not only fought for it, but instilled in him a desire to cherish and preserve it. Ronald Reagan once said that freedom is never more than 1 generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for, protected, and handed on for them to do the same. Nomeda did that for her son. Let's ensure we do the same for the sake of all those who yearn to breathe free.